So Dr. Madduri, can you give an overview of the study design of the phase 1b/2 CARTITUDE-1 study and highlight its findings?
Great. So CARTITUDE-1 actually consists of a phase 1b and a phase 2 portion. The primary objective of the phase 1b was to characterize its safety and confirm the recommended phase 2 dose, as inferred by the LEGEND-2 study, but in a slightly different population. And the primary objective of the phase 2 portion is to evaluate its efficacy. So CARTITUDE-1 used J&J 4528, now has a name, which is cilta-cabtagene autoleucel, or cilta-cel, and it's a structurally distinct second-generation chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapy with 2 BCMA binding domains. And on this study, the patients had to have progressive multiple myeloma, good performance status, had to have measurable disease, and at least exposed to 3 or more prior therapies, including a PI and an IMiD and an anti-CD38.
And what were some of the findings from the study?
So on this CARTITUDE-1 study, today we presented data on the combined phase 1b and the phase 2 portion. And what I wanted to say is that out of the 113 patients that were enrolled in apheresed, 97 patients underwent treatment in the end with cilta-cel. And what's interesting with these is that the overall efficacy rate, the overall response rate was 97%, with 67% of these patients having stringent CR and 93% having VGPR or better. And we know these patients are quite heavily pretreated, as their median prior lines of therapy was 6, and it ranged anywhere from 3 to 18 prior lines of therapy. And to give a one-time treatment to give these kinds of response rates is quite exceptional. What's actually even more impressive is that 72% of these patients are still maintaining their response at the time of data cutoff. And in addition, we know based on the Mammoth study, these patients with relapsed refractory myeloma have a median overall survival of less than 6 months, especially if they're penta-refractory. And in this study, we know at the time of data cutoff, so a median duration of 12.4 months, we saw that the median PFS is at least a full year, and we still haven't really reached the full median PFS yet. So it'll be quite interesting to see with longer follow-up what the PFS ends up being for these patients.
And what are some important takeaways from the study about cilta-cel?
So some of the takeaways for cilta-cel is that it had a manageable safety profile with 95% of the patients having grade 1 and 2 CRS. CRS is a very known complication of CAR T-cell therapy, and most of the patients had grade 1 and 2 CRS with very little grade 3 or higher CRS. Another complication that's known with CAR T-cell therapy is neurotoxicity, and we saw about 21% having all grade neurotoxicity, with about 10% having grade 3 or higher.
And how would the potential approval of a CAR T-cell agent impact the treatment for multiple myeloma?
Yeah, I think having CAR T-cell therapy for multiple myeloma is very, very needed at this moment, because like I mentioned in the Mammoth study, the overall survival for these patients who are penta-exposed is under 6 months. So here we're giving a one-time treatment and hopefully getting deep and durable responses. So there's a lot of patients right now that are not eligible for clinical trials because they may not meet the blood counts, or they have some other comorbidity that can't get them on the clinical trial. But we're hoping that once it's commercially available and it's readily available for our myeloma patients, we can actually help quite a bunch of people.
Where do you see the future going with cilta-cel?
So I just want to say that, right now CAR T is available for patients who have at least 3 or more prior lines of therapy, but a lot of CAR Ts are moving up front in earlier line settings. And so cilta-cel is actually currently being investigated in CARTITUDE-2 and CARTITUDE-4 in the earlier line setting, and also as a possibility for outpatient administration. So what we've actually seen happen with cilta-cel that's a little different from the other CAR Ts is that the median time of onset of CRS is 7 days, with 89% of these patients having CRS at day 4 or later, and 74% of these patients having CRS at day 6 or later, opening up the possibility of outpatient administration, which may really help the patients down the road.